Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, ladies and gentlemen, sometimes you've just got to dial it back to where it all began. And if you are within the sound of my voice, that must mean you are in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of industry professionals and we pick their brain on current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more in a light and conversational fashion. And if you like how we do things around here, I'm guessing you do because you're listening right now. You can subscribe to the podcast. You can find us over at Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google, basically wherever you get your podcasts. And plus, we archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel. So if you can give us a like and subscribe there as well, we would really appreciate it. Also, don't hesitate to follow us on social media. You can find us over at Facebook, at Twitter, and at Instagram, either at In the Seats or at It's Podcast One for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, and I say this a lot, but it's true, it's the most important, please pay us a visit over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca for all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, basically the moving image at large. The business is back up and running, and we got a ton of stuff coming out for award season, so please come check us out because you won't regret it. You'll find what to watch, and that's basically why we're here in the first place. But on this episode, we got a fun one because we're dialing it back to the beginning. We're going back to Raccoon City, and it's we're talking about the new Resident Evil film, which is technically a prequel. It's called Resident Evil: Welcome to Raccoon City, and it shows us the events that happened before we we met Alice and Mila and sort of the original franchise kicked off. It showed us what Umbrella did and sort of how things went awry and how the town basically, and how this corporation destroyed the town and sort of the events therein. And we meet a lot of significant characters who play big parts along the way in the trajectory of the narrative of these stories. And it's pretty it's a little trashy, I'll admit. It goes dark, but it's a fun film, and I really enjoyed it. And we had the distinct pleasure of sitting down with the star, or one of the stars anyway, Mr. Robbie Amell, Canada's own, who saddles into the role of Chris Redfield here in this one, and he does a great job. And we talked a little bit about just sort of the legacy of Resident Evil. I gush a little bit over one of my favorite films of his, which you probably didn't expect, and we talk so very much more, and it's a fun talk, and I hope you enjoy it. But also, don't forget to get out to the movie theaters because it's an important thing, and go check out Resident Evil: Welcome to Raccoon City, which is playing as we speak. But first, enjoy our talk with Robbie. Now, I mean, obviously, first off, congrats on the movie, man. It's a hell of a lot of fun. But I mean, my first question is, and I mean, this is something I've got to ask. I've got to imagine as an actor, when you're jumping into a franchise that's already established, and even a character that's always established, there's always going to be a little bit of trepidation on your part. What was it here that made you want to say yes?
There was no trepidation on my part on this one. I grew up a huge fan of the games. One of my earliest childhood video game memories are the dogs jumping through the window and playing in my basement in the dark. And it was kind of a dream come true for me. The meeting came a little bit out of nowhere. I was at my wife's parents' house quarantining. We had just got back to Toronto, and I had a Zoom meeting with Johannes Roberts, the director, and we just chatted for like an hour and totally geeked out about the games and his version of the movie. And at the end of the hour, he was like, well, I really want to make this movie with you. So I'll get into it with the producers and hopefully I'll see you soon. And I was just like, okay. And I hung up and I walked it back out in the living room. Like, I think it
was that the easiest audition you just had, or?
And my wife was like, come on. I'm like, yeah, I don't know. And it totally delivered for me on all fronts. Johannes was amazing. I think you can tell that he's a big fan of the source material in Resident Evil 1 and 2. And I think it's an adaptation that fans of the games are going to lose their minds over. And if you haven't played the games, it's a super fun, scary zombie movie.
Well, and I mean, I think that's what stood out for me. I mean, comparatively to some of the other films, it felt dark. than maybe I expected, and it needed to feel darker than expected. I'm kind of curious on a shoot like this where you're doing something this dark. How do you maintain sort of energy on set? Because I've got to imagine, as well, on one end you have to be running for your lives and scared out of your mind. It can be a lot of fun at the same time.
It was a weird shoot because it was like kind of prime COVID. We were very lucky to be working and filming, but it was odd in the way that you didn't get to kind of get to know the crew and everybody like you normally would, just because everything was done so carefully. But I mean, you're dressed like the characters. You're in the woods in the middle of the night. You've got an MP5 across your body. The energy's easy. It's, you're there. That kind of does half the job for you. The other thing was the adrenaline for me, just every night of kind of living my, childhood action hero dream was really all I needed. And, all the stuff with the zombies, they're all stunt men and women in full makeup. So, it was always very, everybody went for it. You weren't too worried about, people getting hurt. That's a terrible way of saying it, but they really went for it. They were grabbing,
right.
and it was very cool. It was done in the right way.
What is it about the zombie genre for you that really rings so eternal? Because I mean, honestly, whenever there's a zombie movie, at least for me as a fan, I'm like, fuck it, I'm in. Let's go. I got to watch it.
One of my first zombie movies I loved was Dawn of the Dead, the original one in the mall. And I've seen that movie probably 6 or 7 times, and I just love that movie. But again, I grew up on the games. I mean, Resident Evil was kind of the thing that brought zombies into pop culture a little bit. I mean, 1996, it was a big thing for zombies. And then it hasn't really slowed down since. If anything, it only got bigger with The Walking Dead and so many zombie things out there. But I just think it's cool to be able to adapt something that is so beloved and has such a history and kind of deliver on something that's a little closer to the actual games.
Now, I mean, so this is something I got to ask, because I mean, and to go in the completely opposite direction, I have to fully admit I'm a huge fan of the Duff. I loved Ian the Duff, man. That movie is so fun. But I'm curious, when you're going out for stuff and you're reading, how do you balance sort of the creative need to be fulfilled and want to be a part of something versus this is a nice paycheck and I should pay the rent as well?
Well, I feel like luckily I haven't done the paycheck projects yet. I feel like, everything that I've done, good or bad, I've always had kind of the right reasons or what I thought were the right reasons to do it, whether it was, an interesting script, whether it was interesting people to work with, whether it was a great director, whether it was, there's making a movie is hard and it doesn't always turn out the way you hope it would. But I like to think that I've continued to try and make good projects, or at least, find something out of it. I haven't quite gone the paycheck route yet. Not to say I won't, because, I've got a 2-year-old. But luckily I've just been, I've had a great time so far working with really talented people, and for better or for worse, I'm proud of most of the things that I've put out.
Now, I mean, this is something else that just popped into my head, because, I mean, as you mentioned, the shoot, it was prime COVID. You didn't necessarily get to know everybody. And I mean, when you're making a film, obviously it takes a village. There's a sense of camaraderie. But really, I guess, I can imagine your circle was a lot tighter. How do you sort of develop that team sense when really the team is a lot smaller?
It's different in the way that, you can't chat and get to know everybody as well. The people you're working with day to day, the camera department, who are working so closely with you. I normally like to get to know everybody pretty well and learn about them and their families and stuff. And with this, it was just a little bit like you're in your bubble, you head to set, you do your work, you head back. Everybody was very friendly and everybody was, working very hard, and everybody was staying safe, which, at the end of the day, we were really lucky to be able to do it. But it was a little bit of a bummer to have that same, like you said, that same camaraderie. But the nice thing was everybody was out to make something good, and everybody was happy to be there. even though it was like, cold months in Sudbury, not the not the best place to be hanging out. Nothing against Sudbury. I'm sure it's beautiful this summer, but most of Northern Ontario is a bit of a rough place to be in November, December.
No, for sure, man. And I mean, it comes through in the film because, like you say, you're there to make something good. People are having fun doing it. And I mean, I'm just curious because, I mean, you've been in this business for a minute. How has this business evolved for you over the years? Because I've got to imagine sort of going onto a set where, like you say, you're in a bubble, you're not necessarily participating with everyone, is definitely a bit of a shift from where you started.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's funny. When I first started, I was just I didn't know anything. So I was just a hockey player who happened to start acting. And luckily, I really enjoyed it and worked hard and hopefully got a little better as my career has gone on. But I've always just kind of enjoyed getting to know the people that I work with. And I've been really lucky to work with really amazing people. And one of the things in the last few years that has been, really great for me is getting to continue to work with the same people. I mean, my one of my best friends, Jeff Chan, who directed Code 8, a movie that my cousin and myself produced and are now literally in production on the sequel.
That's
and
right, yeah.
a ton of the crew is back from the first one. And it's great to be working with the same people again. I just finished producing a movie in Vancouver, again, with Jeff and our producing team. And that's been really special for me, is getting to kind of build that other side out with friends and family. And I just feel really lucky to be able to kind of further that side of the business.
Well, that's fantastic, man. It's an important one for sure. Now, I mean, just to start putting a bow on this, and this is a dumb question, but it's one I always like to ask. Was there a movie or a moment in your life that you watched one day as a young guy and just the light bulb went off and went, I got to do this?
No, I literally was a hockey player. I never thought I would play in the NHL. Only one of the guys I played against growing up, Wayne Simmons, made it to the show, but like, I never looked at acting as a career. I did commercials and like little print work for Zeller's catalogs and stuff when I was a kid. And my mom got my sister and I into it. And it was a way to like, put a little bit of money aside for college or whatever, came up. And then summer before 11th grade, I got an audition out of nowhere for Cheaper by the Dozen 2. And I booked it. And just because I look like I could be one of Eugene Levy and Carmen Electra's kids, and I had a blast. I shot the whole summer, and I just kind of looked at this as, if this is, my foot in the door, then I should run with this. And I phoned my hockey coach. I said, I won't be coming back next year. And I got into some on-camera classes downtown Toronto. And then I booked Life with Derek, which shot in Toronto and got me enough press or whatever I needed to get my visa and give it a shot. And it seems like a bigger deal looking back at it, but at the time it was just kind of like, here's an opportunity. Let's see what happens.
Well, you know what? Thanks for running with that opportunity, man. And congrats again on the movie. It is a hell of a lot of fun. I can't wait for people to see it. I think it's going to be a blast. And again, just, man, thanks for the time. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. Great talking to you.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.